What if I told you that in the heart of the great red desert existed a nomadic realm where only one rule mattered: the weak do not wake up the next morning? In this story, you will step into the world of Kochisaria, a brutal nomadic confederation where sandstorms could flay skin from bone, where predators hunted human silhouettes at night, and where a stranger like you would not survive even a single day. Across 33 chapters, you'll witness their laws, their rights, their constant war for survival, the merciless desert spirits they believed in, and the predators that lived beneath the dunes. And you will understand, step by step, why no outsider has ever lasted longer than a sunrise among them. And now your journey begins. Before we start, it's a good idea to go to bed and relax. I also want to ask you to subscribe to my channel, like it and write in the comments where you are from and what time it is. Using the link in the description you can support me. Thank you. Sweet dreams. They say the desert of Kochisaria is not simply a place, it is a living judge. The nomads believe that from the moment a stranger steps onto their dunes, the sands begin watching him, measuring his heartbeat, his sweat, the tremble of his breath. If the desert dislikes what it senses, it swallows him before nightfall. Sometimes the sands open beneath a traveler's feet. Other times, something opens him instead. You didn't know any of this when you arrived at the outer dunes. You only knew the heat felt wrong. Heat everywhere is hot, but this one was heavy, like a hand pressing against your chest. The air shimmered around you, bending shapes, breaking perspective. It felt as if the desert didn't want to be seen clearly. The Kochisarian scouts found you before sunset. Their silhouettes appeared over a ridge, moving silently despite their heavy curved blades and layered leather armor. Their faces were wrapped in black cloth, revealing only the eyes, dry, narrow, unreadable. The one in front asked you a single question. Do you carry fear? If you answered yes, they would leave you to die. A person who admits fear is not worth the water it costs to let him live. If you lied and said no, they would test you immediately, and the test usually left bodies. You didn't understand this, so you hesitated. In Kochisaria, hesitation is a confession. The leader dismounted his sandrunner, a tall, lean, reptilian beast, bred to withstand the burning dunes, and stepped toward you. You finally replied something uncertain, something between a no and maybe. He stared at you for a long time before saying, "The desert will decide." They took you with them not out of mercy, but because the sands were already shifting in the west. A storm was rising. Even Kochisarian warriors do not stand against a real storm. They tied your hands to a saddle and pulled you along as they rode. Your legs burned trying to keep up, but they did not slow. In Kochisaria, those who fall behind are not picked up, they are left as gifts to the predators that follow caravans in the twilight. By the time you reached their night encampment, the storm was already on the horizon. You expected tents, fires, something civilized. Instead, the nomads halted in a hollow between dunes and silently began preparing for the night sweep. No fabric shelters. No fire. Nothing that could attract attention from the creatures that walked the sands after dark. One of the warriors approached you with a bundle of thorned branches. "Your shield," he said, and dropped it at your feet. You didn't understand at first. Then you saw the others building small cages of thorns around their sleeping spots, tight, narrow, barely big enough for a curled body. The branches were sharp enough to pierce leather. They were meant not for protection from humans, but from something that hated the taste of thorns. "What comes at night?" you asked. No one answered. Only when the wind died and the temperature dropped fast enough to make your teeth ache did you hear it, the soft, dragging sound across the sand. Not footsteps. Not paws. Something smoother. Lower. Sliding. The nomads froze. Even the beasts froze. You tried to peer over your thorn cage, but a hand forced your head down. "Do not look," the warrior hissed. "If it sees your eyes, it remembers." You lay still, heart pounding so loudly you were sure the creature would hear. The sliding sound circled the camp. Once. Twice. Then it paused near you. Something rested heavily against the outer wall of thorns, testing them. You felt the sand shift under your body. You understood then why they said outsiders don't survive a single night. The desert itself was checking whether you deserved to see the next sunrise. The weight pressing against your thorn cage grew heavier, as if something enormous had settled its full attention on you. You didn't dare breathe. The branches creaked, just slightly, but enough to remind you how fragile they were against whatever rested on the other side. You tried not to imagine teeth, or claws, or a mouth wide enough to swallow a person whole. But the desert does not respect your imagination, it replaces it with truth. The sand shifted again. A long, slow movement, like an exhale under the ground. You felt grains rising beneath your ribs. Not rolling, lifting. As if something massive slid directly beneath your body. The Kochizarians had warned you without words, don't look, don't move, don't acknowledge. You obeyed. Minutes passed. Or maybe hours. Time bends strangely in the desert night. Eventually the pressure faded, and the sliding sound moved away. You could hear it circling the camp again, disappointed, searching for a weaker target. Something easier to tear from the cage of thorns. Something slower, softer, or foolish enough to peek. In the darkness you heard a faint, muffled cry. Then silence. A distant crunch followed, dry, sharp, final. No one moved. Even the beasts bowed their long necks and shut their eyes, pretending not to exist. Only when the warm breath of dawn touched the dunes did the nomads begin to rise. They emerged from their cages in complete silence. No stretching, no talking. Survival in Kochisaria is not celebrated. It is merely expected. You struggled to crawl out of the thorn cage, your hands scraped, your knees burning. The leader, his name still unknown to you, watched you with expressionless eyes. He seemed surprised you were alive. Outsider, he said, the desert did not choose you for death tonight. A strange compliment, but among Kochizarians, it was the closest thing to approval. As the sun climbed, the dunes returned to their deceptive calm. But when you stepped out of your cage, your foot sank deeper than it should have. You knelt and brushed the sand aside. There, half buried, lay a shredded leather boot. Inside it, a fragment of someone's foot. You dropped the sand and stepped back, heart hammering. The nomads didn't look at the grisly remains. They simply mounted their sandrunners and prepared to move, as if losing someone to the night was routine. Which, for them, it was. One of the younger warriors approached you. Her eyes were sharp, her movements quick. She shoved a leather water skin into your hands. Drink carefully, she said. Not because we care if you waste it, but because you will die if you do. The water tasted like smoke and metal, thick with minerals. Desert water is never fresh. Freshness is a luxury of rivers, and rivers do not exist in Kochisaria. As the caravan started moving, the leader finally spoke to you again. You walk today, he said. The desert needs to see how you move. You wanted to argue, to explain that your legs were still trembling from the night. But the warriors were already riding ahead, leaving you to follow on foot. The dunes stretched endlessly. Heat returned with merciless force, baking the sand until it shimmered like molten glass. Every step sank half a foot. Every breath scraped your lungs with burning air. The nomads didn't look back, not once. They expected you to keep up. If you slowed, you would be left behind as casually as they had left the remains of the night's victim. After an hour of walking under the blazing sun, your vision blurred. The edges of the world wavered. Sweat evaporated before it could cool you. Your heart pounded too fast, too hard. This was the real test. Not the creature of the night. Not the storm on the horizon. The desert itself wanted to know if your body belonged here, or if it would break. By noon, you were stumbling. By early afternoon, you were falling to your knees every few hundred steps. The sand tasted bitter. You didn't remember when you began crawling. But then a shadow covered you. You looked up. The young warrior, the one who had given you water, was sitting on her sand runner, staring down at you. For a moment, you thought she had returned to help. She hadn't. She pointed to the east. "Get up," she said. "If you want to survive Kochisaria, you must reach the stone of noon. Collapse anywhere else, and the desert will decide you were a mistake." You looked where she pointed, but you saw nothing, just endless dunes, blurred by heat. "The stone," she repeated. "Walk." Then she rode away, leaving you alone under the burning sky. You pushed yourself up, legs shaking. Somewhere unseen, something underground shifted again. The desert was still watching. Still deciding. And you, weak, exhausted, half dehydrated, had to prove you were worth letting live one more hour. You walked until walking became a strange mechanical process, one leg forward, then the other, without thought, without rhythm, without purpose except not to fall. The sun was no longer a circle in the sky, it was a weight pressing on your shoulders, draining your strength with every breath. Sweat dried on your skin the moment it appeared, leaving behind a crust of salt. Your tongue felt thick, your throat raw. Yet the stone of noon remained invisible. You began to wonder if the young warrior had lied. If the stone was nothing more than a cruel joke played on outsiders. A way to watch how long a foreigner would last before collapsing face first into the scorching sand. But then, after what felt like an eternity, you saw it. A faint, dark shape rising from the dunes, shimmering in the heat. You couldn't tell if it was close or impossibly far, the desert bends distance as easily as it bends light. Still, the sight of something solid, unmoving, real ignited a final spark in your fading strength. You moved toward it. At first, it was no more than a black spearpoint piercing the horizon. Then you saw its edges, straight, impossible for a natural formation. Closer still, you saw carvings. Strange symbols etched deep into its flat surface. The stone of noon stood taller than a man, half sunken into the dunes. A monument no one could explain. Some said it was placed by the first nomads. Others claimed it marked the grave of a warlord whose shadow stretched across the desert. A few whispered that it was older than humanity, a relic left by whatever lived beneath the sands long before humans dared to cross them. You didn't care about legends. You only cared about reaching it. When your hand finally touched the warm, black surface, you collapsed to your knees, gasping. Your palm tingled, the stone was humming. A deep, low vibration, almost like breathing. Or maybe that was just your pulse hammering in your ears. You rested your forehead against it, letting the shade it cast fall over your face. It felt miraculous, like a blessing. But in Kochisaria, blessings always come with a price. The moment your eyes closed, the ground trembled. A shadow swept over you, not from the sun, but from above. You forced your eyes open. A massive bird, wings broad as sails, circled overhead. Its cry cut through the silence like a blade. A desert vulture. But not like the ones you knew. This one was larger, heavier, its wings lined with strange bone spurs. Its eyes were intelligent, scanning the sand for something dying. Something weak. Something like you. You tried to stand. Your muscles refused. The bird dropped lower, its shadow shrinking around you. You heard the rush of air from its wings with every pass. It was waiting for you to fall fully still. Waiting for death to claim you so it could begin its meal. To the vulture, the stone of noon wasn't a monument. It was a feeding post. You forced yourself upright, leaning heavily on the stone. The bird shrieked, irritated. You were not dead enough yet. You lifted your arms, waving them weakly, trying to look larger. It only made the creature bolder. It dove, talons outstretched, the wind roaring past your ears. A whistle cut through the air. Then an arrow. It struck the bird in the wing, spinning it off course. The creature screeched and flapped wildly, disappearing toward the west. You sagged against the stone, shaking. The young warrior approached on her sand runner, bow in hand, her face unreadable. You disappoint easily, she said. But you don't die easily. That counts. You wanted to thank her. She didn't give you the chance. The stone of noon is where we judge those who walk with us, she continued. Some return from the dunes broken. Some crawl. None arrive without being changed. She tossed you a small leather pouch. Salt, she said. Eat. Your blood is thinning. The salt stung your cracked lips as it touched your tongue, drawing moisture into your mouth. It was unpleasant, bitter, but your strength slowly returned in tiny, painful waves. The warrior motioned to the stone. Now you may read it, she said. Regaining your breath, you turned to the carved symbols. They spiraled downward like a story written by a patient, ancient hand. You traced them with your fingers, unable to interpret their meaning, but feeling their weight. What does it say? You asked. The warrior mounted her beast and looked down at you. It says, she replied, that the desert accepts those who rise again. You glanced at your hands, shaking, blistered, but still alive. Then she added quietly. And that those who fail are taken back. Before you could ask what she meant, the sand behind the stone shifted. You saw a shape, long, dark, sliding beneath the surface. A reminder that not all dangers waited for night. The warrior turned her sand runner toward the north. You took your first step away from the stone of noon. Your legs trembled, but they obeyed. The desert watched. And the true tests had not even begun. You followed the young warrior north, your legs aching with each step. The stone of noon still loomed behind you like a black tooth rising from the dunes, humming faintly in the heat. You felt as though some invisible cord connected you to it, a pull, a warning, or perhaps a promise. But you had no time to look back. In Kochisaria, hesitation is the first form of death. The nomads rode ahead at an unhurried, steady pace, guiding their sandrunners with minimal gestures. The beasts moved with an unnatural grace, gliding across the dunes with long strides that barely disturbed the sand. You envied them. Every step you took felt heavy, sinking deeper, fighting the shifting ground. After an hour, the dunes changed. The sand turned paler, finer, almost white. The heat intensified. The air here seemed thinner, sharper, cutting at your lungs. The young warrior finally slowed her mount and glanced back at you. This is the sun path, she said. Only the worthy cross it. You looked across the dunes. They stretched endlessly, unbroken by stone or shadow. The light reflecting off the pale sand was blinding. The heat shimmered in violent waves. What makes someone worthy? You asked, trying to keep your voice steady. Survival, she answered simply. Nothing else matters here. The tribe halted at the edge of the pale dunes. You approached, panting, as the leader dismounted and walked toward you. His shadow fell over your face like a relief from the blinding glare. You reached the stone, he said. You rise when the desert tells you to fall. This is good. His voice carried no warmth, only recognition. Like acknowledging a tool that had not yet broken. But now, he continued, you must face the sun path. This is the trial of breath and bone. The desert tests the mind here, not the body. Many are strong. Fewer are calm. The dunes of the sun path are haunted by illusions. Illusions, you repeated. Heat ghosts, he said. Visions of what you fear. And what you desire. You swallowed. Your mouth was sand dry again. And if I fail? The leader nodded to the dunes. Then the desert keeps you. The young warrior added, do not trust what you see. Trust only footsteps, yours or ours. You turned to the dunes and felt your skin prickle. The air shimmered with distortions, like a veil rippling over something dangerous. You took a breath and stepped forward. The sun path swallowed you instantly. The brightness was overwhelming, a white blaze that erased the horizon. The dunes pulsed as if alive, rising and falling with your heartbeat. You blinked, but the world didn't sharpen. The shapes around you wavered like reflections on disturbed water. You heard whispers. At first they were faint, like the wind brushing against stone. Then they grew clearer, voices calling your name. Familiar voices. Impossible voices. You shook your head and kept walking. The sand scorched your feet through your thin soles. Each step sent a shock of pain up your legs. Sweat stung your eyes. The first illusion struck you when you least expected it. You saw a figure standing on the dune ahead. Someone you knew. Someone you had lost long ago. They raised an arm, beckoning. You froze. The voice calling your name was identical, tone, rhythm, warmth. The ache in your chest felt real. Too real. But you remembered the warrior's warning. Do not trust what you see. You forced your legs to move. The illusion dissolved like smoke. The second came moments later, a shape behind you, moving fast. You spun around, expecting one of the desert predators. Instead, you saw a massive shadow rising from the sand, stretching higher than any creature should. Its shape twisted, forming horns, jaws, claws, everything your mind feared. You closed your eyes. When you opened them, it was gone. The third illusion tried to deceive you with comfort. The air cooled suddenly. A stream appeared at your feet, crystal clear water flowing over smooth stones. You could hear it trickling, taste its freshness just by breathing. Your entire body screamed for relief. Your throat burned. Your limbs trembled. You wanted, desperately, to kneel and drink. But streams do not exist in Kochisaria. You stepped forward. Your foot touched the stream, and the illusion shattered, burning away like paper in a flame. The heat returned, harsher than before. You staggered. The whispers turned into laughter, cruel, echoing, everywhere and nowhere. Your thoughts tangled like dry roots. The ground beneath you tilted, though you knew it was flat. The sun seemed to pulse, beating against your skull. You fell to one knee. The dunes spun. Your breath came in ragged gasps. You pressed your palms into the sand, trying to anchor yourself to something real. But the world melted, reshaped, brightened. A hand seized your shoulder. Stand, the young warrior said. Her grip was strong, real, grounding. You blinked, and the dunes settled around you. The illusions faded. The laughter stopped. You walked too far into your mind, she said. The sun path preys on thought. You must empty your head or it fills it for you. She helped you up, not gently, but firmly. Look, she said, nodding ahead. Through the waves of heat, you saw shadows, tense, low and round, painted with red symbols. A real encampment. You have crossed the sun path, the warrior said. Few outsiders do. You nearly collapsed with relief. Nearly. But then the leader appeared beside her, staring at you with the same unreadable eyes. The trial is past, he said. But your place among us is not earned yet. His gaze drifted to the north, where distant storms formed black walls on the horizon. Tomorrow, he said, comes the harder test. You swallowed hard. The desert was not finished with you. Not even close. The encampment of Kochisaria rose from the dunes like a mirage that refused to vanish. As you approached, the shape solidified into round, low tents made of treated hide stretched over curved bone frames. Each tent was painted with red symbols, spirals, claw marks, sunbursts, jagged lines that looked more like wounds than artwork. Nothing here felt decorative. Everything felt ritualistic, purposeful, alive. As you stepped into the camp, dozens of eyes turned toward you. Warriors, elders, children clutching bone-carved toys, all watching in absolute silence. Their stares were sharp, almost predatory, as if measuring your worth with a glance. You felt like prey walking into a ring of patient hunters. The young warrior dismounted and addressed the crowd. He crossed the sun path. No applause. No surprise. Just quiet acknowledgement. A tall woman stepped forward, her hair braided with feathers and thin metal rings that chimed softly in the wind. Her face was lined with age, her posture straight as a spear. The tribe parted for her as if she carried the weight of the entire desert on her shoulders. This, you assumed, was someone important. She studied you for a long moment. Her gaze was not hostile, just impossibly deep, as if she was looking through you into the place where your fears slept. "I am Shira of the Red Sand," she said. Her voice was low, steady. "I read the signs of the dunes, the patterns of storms, the hunger of the night creatures." You swallowed, unsure how to respond. She reached out and touched your cheek with a fingertip. Her skin was warm, unexpectedly so. "The desert has tasted you," she murmured. "But it has not claimed you. Not yet." The leader stepped beside her. "He will face the second trial at dawn." Shira nodded. "Good. A spirit that survives the night and the sun must be tested by blood next." You stiffened. "Blood?" Neither of them explained. Instead, Shira turned and gestured for you to follow. The tribe's eyes tracked your every step as she led you toward a central tent, the largest, painted with broad strokes of ash-black pigment. 2 guards stood at its entrance, holding curved spears shaped like the teeth of some enormous predator. Inside, the air was cooler. Strange incense burned in clay bowls, filling the space with a spicy, metallic scent. The smoke curled upward, forming slow spirals before dissolving into the canvas roof. Shira motioned for you to sit on a woven mat. "You are tired," she said. "The sun path steals pieces of the mind. Rest a moment." But you weren't given long. She retrieved a clay dish filled with dark red sand and sprinkled it in a circle around you. Then she sat across from you, adjusting the bone talismans around her neck. "You wish to understand Kochisaria," she said. "Before the next trial, you must know what hunts us, and what we hunt." You nodded, unsure where this was going. Shira closed her eyes. "Long before our people rode these dunes, the desert belonged to others. They lived beneath the sands, moving in tunnels older than the first fire. They feel vibrations. They taste fear. At night they rise to feed." A chill crept down your spine. You remembered the creature that slid past your cage of thorns. Shira leaned closer. "We do not kill them. We cannot. The desert births them as it births storms." Her voice lowered. "But there are other dangers. Human ones." She drew a symbol in the sand between you, a jagged line crossed with 3 slashes. "This is the mark of the Black Suns," she said. "Nomads who once were our kin. They rejected the old laws. They drink poisoned water. They follow a different god of the deep. And they hunt our people." You stared at the symbol. It looked familiar, not from memory, but from instinct. A shape that stirred unease, as though buried somewhere in your mind. "They watch us," Shira continued. "They wait for storms to hide their approach. And soon, a storm will come." You remembered the dark walls forming on the horizon. Shira opened her eyes, sharp as obsidian. "The blood trial exists because of them. We must know who among us can fight. Who can stand without fear. Who the desert allows to wield a blade." You felt your hands tremble slightly. "So, the next trial is combat?" you asked. Shira smiled, but it wasn't comforting. "No. Combat is mercy compared to what awaits." She leaned back and extinguished one of the incense bowls with her fingers. The smoke curled around her like a living thing. At dawn, she said, you will enter the circle of teeth. You will face whatever rises from the sand when your blood touches it. You froze. You mean, one of the night creatures? No, she said softly. Those belong to darkness. The ones beneath the circle are awake in the day. A gust of wind struck the tent from outside, making the walls ripple. Shira stood. Rest now. Dawn will not pity you. You lay back on the mat, but rest refused to come. The incense, the whispers outside, the endless shifting of sand, it all fed a single truth. The desert did not want you to survive. But Kochisaria demanded that you try. Dawn in Kochisaria did not arrive gently. There was no cool breeze, no soft glow creeping over the dunes. The sun leapt over the horizon like a thrown spear, stabbing light across the sand. Its heat was instant, merciless, as though the night had never existed at all. The young warrior, your reluctant guide, pulled aside the tent flap and stared down at you. It's time. You rose, limbs still heavy from the sun path's illusions. When you stepped outside, the entire tribe had already gathered. Warriors formed a broad semicircle around a deep depression in the sand, an enormous ring carved into the earth. Its edges were lined with sharp shards of sun-bleached bone. They jutted outward like fangs. The circle of teeth. Shira, the elder of Red Sands, stood beside the leader. Her expression was unreadable, but her stance told you this moment mattered. Not just for you, for them. The tribe had seen many outsiders attempt this trial. Few walked out again. The leader pointed to the center of the ring. Step inside. The crowd fell silent. Even the wind held its breath. You approached reluctantly. The sand inside the circle looked darker, heavier, as though soaked with something old. Your feet sank slightly with each step, as if the ground wanted to pull you under. Shira spoke loud enough for all to hear. When an outsider seeks to remain with Kochisaria, we ask the desert to judge his blood. Not his strength, not his skill, his essence. For the dunes know what hides in a man more clearly than we ever could. She handed you a thin bone blade. It was light, sharp, and warm to the touch, too warm. Your trial is simple, Shira said. You spill a single drop of your blood upon the sand. What wakes will decide your worth. Your pulse hammered. Wake. What wakes? The leader answered with grim calm. What sleeps beneath the circle is not a beast. It is not a demon. It is an echo of the desert's will. You didn't fully understand, but your fear did. Still, you stepped to the center. The tribe watched without expression. You sensed no malice, no cruelty. This wasn't a performance. It was a ritual older than any of them. You lifted the bone blade to your palm. Do not cut deep, the young warrior murmured. Only enough for the sands to taste. Her voice carried the faintest hint of concern. Or maybe that was wishful thinking. You drew the blade gently across your skin. A thin red line appeared. A single drop fell. The desert reacted instantly. The sand beneath your feet shivered, then split with a dry cracking sound. A thin line opened, then widened, spiraling outward like a fissure. The ground pulsed. Something moved below you. The warriors raised their weapons, not to protect you, but to contain whatever rose. The sand erupted. A pale tendril shot upward, thin as a whip, ending in a barbed point. It struck toward your leg with blinding speed. You barely leaped aside as it stabbed into the ground where you'd stood. The crowd did not flinch. This, to them, was normal. Another tendril burst out, then another. Each one writhed, tasting the air, searching. They moved with terrifying accuracy, drawn to the scent of your blood. You backed away, but the tendrils followed smoothly, sensing every vibration. Shira called out, "Do not run. Running means death." You forced yourself still, standing as firmly as your shaking legs allowed. The tendrils slowed. Then the sand bulged, rising in a dome. A creature emerged, slowly, reluctantly, its pale form pushing through the dunes like something birthed from the earth. It had no eyes, no mouth you could see. Its surface was smooth, segmented, almost worm-like, though thicker than your torso. Lines of tiny sensory pits rippled along its skin. It moved in a slow arc around you, circling, testing, tasting. Your fear spiked when it leaned nearer, one tendril brushing your arm. The touch was cold and dry, like old parchment. You expected it to strike, to pierce, to drag you under. But it didn't. Instead, it recoiled. The creature paused. Then, incredibly, it lowered itself, sinking back into the sand. One by one the tendrils followed, slipping beneath the surface. The ground sealed over them until the circle looked untouched. Silence. Then Shira spoke, "The desert does not hunger for you." A murmur rippled through the tribe. Not joy, not disappointment. Just acknowledgement of a strange, undeniable truth. The leader stepped forward. "You live." The young warrior exhaled softly. Relief, perhaps. Or resignation. But Shira was not done. "Understand this," she said. "The creature did not spare you out of mercy. It sensed fear, but not the kind that invites death. It sensed a mind not yet broken." She narrowed her eyes. "And that is both your strength and your danger." You stared at her, pulse still racing. The sand under your feet was quiet again, but you couldn't shake the feeling that something still watched you from beneath the dunes. Shira lifted her hand. "The blood trial is complete. But the third trial begins at dusk." You swallowed. "There's a third." The leader nodded toward the dark horizon, where clouds like mountains were rising. "The storm. The one the black suns will use." He looked at you with a rare flicker of something like concern. "Tonight, outsider, we fight." You felt the desert shift beneath you. Surviving the circle of teeth was only the beginning. Night in the red expanse never truly slept. Even when the dunes lay motionless and the winds hushed themselves to thin whispers, the desert watched. It listened. It waited. And on your 7th day among the nomads of Kochisaria, you finally began to understand why they feared silence more than storms. You awoke to a faint vibration, as if the ground were murmuring beneath your bedroll. At first you thought it was your imagination, the result of exhaustion, dehydration, and the constant tension of living on borrowed time. But then you saw it, the look on the warriors' faces. They were still, alert, breathless. Even the camels froze, ears angled sharply toward the dark horizon. "Sand wraiths," whispered Kadir, the nomad who'd taken it upon himself to keep you alive. "They move before dawn. We travel now." No one argued. Orders weren't spoken, they were understood, lived, expected. The tribe dismantled half the camp in minutes, each person operating with flawless precision. You did your best to keep up, but every step you took felt clumsy, slow, obvious. In Kochisaria, hesitation was a kind of weakness, and weakness invited the desert to claim you. The caravan moved out beneath a sky so deep and blue it looked like a lid closing over the world. Behind you, the dunes shifted with soft sighs of moving sand. You couldn't see the creatures Kadir was worried about, but their presence hung in the air like static. There was something unsettling about knowing predators could remain completely unseen yet close enough to press vibrations into the earth. The new route was punishing. The nomads followed a jagged ridge of blackened rock that jutted from the desert floor like the spine of a buried titan. The path was narrow, the wind sharp and metallic. For the nomads, this was nothing. For you, it was agony. Every muscle burned. Every breath rasped. Still, you kept moving. Pride was a weak shield here, but it was the only one you had. Hours passed before the caravan reached a series of sun-scorched stone arches, natural formations sculpted by centuries of wind. The nomads called them the teeth of the earth, and looking at their serrated edges, you understood why. Beneath their shade, the tribe finally paused. You collapsed beside a water skin, swallowing the warm, bitter liquid as though it were nectar from paradise. Kadir sat beside you, his face unreadable beneath his scarf. "You are slowing," he said calmly. Not accusing, simply stating fact. "I'm trying," you muttered. In Kochisaria, trying is not enough. The desert does not care about effort. Only outcome. You knew he was right, but the truth stung. There was no room for comfort here, no space for excuses. Every step, every breath had to matter. Before you could answer, a sudden howl tore through the silence. It was deep, resonant, and impossibly close. Your blood froze. Kadir stood instantly. Not afraid, prepared. They found us. From the dunes beyond the arches, shapes emerged. Long, sinuous silhouettes, moving with a fluidity that felt unnatural. Their eyes glowed faintly under the rising sun. Sand wraiths. Not ghosts, beasts. Predators the size of wolves but built like something far older, far more efficient. Their bodies were lean and pale, covered in a fine layer of dust that let them blend seamlessly with the dunes. You had never seen creatures move so silently. The nomads encircled the caravan in seconds, forming a protective ring around the families and supplies. Spears lowered. Bows raised. Kadir shoved you behind him without ceremony. "You do not fight," he said. "You do not run. You stay behind us and make yourself invisible." But what if? There is no what if. There is only survival. Let us handle the desert's children. The wraiths crept closer, sand swirling around their limbs. The air tightened. The earth trembled. And for the first time, you realized that among the nomads of Kochisaria, every dawn was a battle, and every battle was a choice between becoming stronger, or becoming a memory. The standoff with the sand wraith stretched into a long, breathless moment, so tense it felt as if the entire desert were holding itself still. Every nomad stood rooted in place, spears angled down, shoulders squared, bodies poised with the kind of readiness that only came from living each day at the edge of death. You, by contrast, felt like a single misplaced exhale might doom everyone. The wraiths inched forward, their movements unnervingly smooth, like wind-given bones. They circled wide, testing angles, searching for the weakest link in the tribe's formation. You prayed they wouldn't notice it was you. Kadir slowly extended one hand, palm downward, signaling the warriors not to attack first. "Let them choose," he whispered. "If they sense fear, they strike. If they sense confidence, they hesitate." You swallowed hard. Fear was all you had. One of the creatures suddenly broke from the circle, pacing toward you with deliberate slowness. Its pale fur shimmered with particles of sand, creating an illusion that its body flickered in and out of existence. The beast lowered its head, sniffing the air, its eyes reflecting the faintest hint of red. You froze, pulse slamming inside your skull. Kadir shifted slightly, placing himself between you and the predator without breaking eye contact. His spear dipped lower. For a moment, the creature and the nomad stared into each other, two desert-born wills testing dominance. Then, with a low rumble, the wraith blinked first. It stepped back, returning to its pack. The others responded as if on cue. They circled twice more, then retreated into the dunes, disappearing as quietly as they had arrived. Only when the last ripple of sand settled did the nomads finally breathe again. You exhaled so forcefully your lungs hurt. "We move," Kadir said. "They will return. They always return." The tribe gathered their things in record time, pushing deeper into the spine-like rock formations. The sun climbed higher, turning the air sharp and dry. Heat radiated off the stones, wrapping around you like a furnace. Sweat evaporated before it could drip. Your throat felt like cracked leather. Hours later, the caravan reached a plateau overlooking a vast basin glittering with white crystal patches. At first you mistook them for snow, but Kadir shook his head. Salt plains. Beautiful, yes. Deadly, also yes. Cross them at the wrong hour, and the light blinds you. Stay too long, and the salt eats your skin. You blinked, uncertain whether he was exaggerating. But the nomad's solemn expressions confirmed otherwise. Everything in Kochisaria tried to kill you, even the ground. The descent into the basin was slow. Wind swept across the flats with sharp, cutting force. The salt crunched underfoot like broken glass. The sun reflected off it so fiercely you had to wrap cloth over your eyes just to see. Despite the danger, the tribe walked calmly, as though these plains were familiar streets rather than a shimmering trap. Children ran ahead, skipping. Warriors hummed old desert songs. Kadir, for the first time since you'd known him, let his posture relax slightly. This place is safe for a few hours, he explained. No predators cross here. Not even the wraiths. Too bright for them. You took a shaky breath. A moment of peace. You badly needed it. But as the caravan approached a cluster of shaded ridges at the far end of the basin, a new sound echoed across the flats, deep, rhythmic thuds, like distant drums. The nomads immediately stopped. Kadir's face hardened. Not wraiths. Worse. Before you could ask, the ground trembled again. Then a second time, stronger. Dust rose in tiny plumes around your feet. The elders exchanged grim looks. A sandstorm beast. You had heard whispers of these creatures in passing, massive, territorial, nearly blind but devastating in their fury. Nomads avoided them at all costs. Yet now, one was approaching. The tribe broke into a run, their normally fluid movements sharpened by urgency. Warriors pushed supplies onto sleds, children were lifted onto camels, and the entire caravan surged toward the far cliffs. You tried to keep pace, but the salt burned your feet through your sandals. Your breath hitched. Your legs shook. Kadir grabbed your arm and hauled you forward. Move. When the beast rises, the plains turn into death. Behind you, something enormous groaned beneath the salt crust. A massive shadow shifted under the surface, sending waves of trembling through the ground. You didn't dare look back. You didn't dare slow down. For the second time in a single day, death was rising from the desert. And you were the slowest thing in its path. The salt plains exploded behind you with a thunderous crack, as if the world itself were splitting open. You didn't have to turn around to know the sandstorm beast had breached the surface. The vibration slammed through your legs, nearly knocking you off your feet. Kadir yanked you upright and pushed you forward. Do not stop. Do not look, he shouted, voice sharper than you had ever heard it. But curiosity, terror, overwhelmed you for a single heartbeat. You glanced back. The salt crust trembled, bulging upward in a mound almost the size of a house. Cracks spiderwebbed across its surface, glowing faintly as pressurized sand blasted upward. Then, with a roar that swallowed the entire basin, the creature erupted from the ground. It was enormous, far larger than you imagined anything surviving in Kochisaria could be. Its body resembled a monstrous serpent or worm, but plated with rough, stone-like scales encrusted with salt. Each movement shook the earth. Sand cascaded from its armor in shimmering waterfalls. Its head was blunt and eyeless, guided only by vibration and sound, yet somehow its posture radiated pure, ancient rage. No sudden movements. Kadir barked. It hunts thunder, not shadows. You weren't sure what that meant, but the nomads instantly softened their steps. Even while running, they moved with uncanny silence, spreading their weight in quick, practiced motions that barely disturbed the ground. You tried to mimic them, but panic made your steps heavy and uneven. The beast's head snapped in your direction, sensing the disturbance. It let out another furious bellow and burrowed a dozen meters forward in seconds, tearing through the salt like water. Kadir grabbed your wrist so firmly it hurt. You must listen. Feel the ground. Glide, do not pound. Easier said than done. The cliffs were still far away. Too far. The tribe's formation tightened around the families and supplies, pushing them ahead. Warriors prepared slings and throw spears, though you could tell none of them truly wished to fight. This creature was a force of nature, not prey. The beast surged again, and the plains trembled beneath its weight. Salt dust filled the air in choking clouds. Your legs burned. Your lungs ached. You stumbled twice, catching yourself only because Kadir refused to let you fall. The cliffs, someone shouted. Faster. But the beast was gaining speed, tunneling under the crust in a massive ripple of destruction. It would reach you long before you reached safety. Then, suddenly, a deep horn sounded, low, vibrating, ancient. It echoed across the salt basin like the voice of the desert itself. The nomads reacted instantly, veering left toward a narrow ravine hidden by a line of dark stone fins. You followed, heart pounding, unsure why the horn mattered until Kadir explained between breaths. The ravine confuses ground shakers. Too many echoes. It may lose our trail. May. Not will. You reached the ravine just as the creature erupted behind the caravan again. A wave of hot wind and shattered salt slammed into your back, sending you sprawling. The nomads dove into the shadows of the ravine. Kadir dragged you in after them. Inside, the noise became unbearable. The beast struck the ground repeatedly, confused by the vibrations bouncing between the stone walls. Its roar echoed through the narrow corridor, shaking dust loose in soft cascades. The nomads pressed against the rock, motionless. You held your breath, despite every instinct screaming to gasp for air. Minutes passed. Or maybe hours. Time dissolved in fear. Finally, the tremors lessened. The roars grew distant. The beast, frustrated, bored, or exhausted, tunneled back into the desert, disappearing beneath the crust with a final, echoing groan. No one moved until the last vibration faded. Only then did Kadir exhale, shoulders slumping with relief. You see now, he said quietly. In Kochisaria, death does not always hunt with teeth or hunger. Sometimes it rises from the ground itself. You nodded weakly, feeling your heartbeat begin to settle. But the truth was inescapable. Every day with the nomads had been a lesson in survival. Every lesson nearly killed you. And yet the journey was only beginning. The tribe slowly emerged from the ravine, checking supplies, calming animals, gathering children. Despite the terror, they carried on with practiced calm. For them, this was not an ordeal, this was normal life. You looked out across the shimmering salt flats behind you and wondered. How many more dangers waited beyond the horizon? How many more ways could the desert test you? And more importantly, how many more days could you truly survive? The desert night fell like a black curtain, swallowing the salt flats and cliffs in a heavy, suffocating darkness. Stars pierced the sky, distant and indifferent, but even their light seemed weak against the vastness of Kochisaria. You huddled near the center of the camp, your body still trembling from the sandstorm beast, but your mind refused rest. Every shadow seemed to move. Every whisper of wind felt alive. The nomads were already preparing for the night's trial. Fires were lit in shallow pits, not for warmth or cooking, but to mark boundaries, to provide faint light against predators and illusions alike. Warriors checked their weapons, silently touching edges and points with precise, ritualistic care. Children were hushed by elders, their eyes wide and alert. You realized that in Kochisaria, night was never for sleeping. It was for watching, waiting, surviving. Shira approached, her silhouette outlined by firelight. She didn't speak at first, only watched you with a gaze that measured fear and endurance alike. Then, finally, she said, "Tonight, you learn why the desert does not forgive the careless. It will test what you value most, life, instinct, or courage. You tried to speak, but the words caught in your throat. Courage. Life. Instinct. All you knew was exhaustion, pain, and fear. She handed you a small bone talisman, carved with intricate patterns. Hold this, she instructed. It will guide your senses. But it cannot save you from yourself. The rest of the tribe mounted their sandrunners and moved silently toward a ridge overlooking a deep, blackened canyon. You followed on foot, clutching the talisman tightly, feeling its strange warmth pulse against your palm. The canyon below was a yawning abyss, and you could hear faint sounds echoing from it, shifts in the sand, the scraping of claws, the low rumble of movement that made your chest tighten. This is the maw, Shira said quietly. It is older than any living creature you've encountered. It listens. It senses hesitation, weakness, lies. Tonight, it will demand proof of your worth. You swallowed hard and stared at the abyss. A cool wind rose from below, carrying the scent of earth, salt, and decay. You wanted to look away, to hide, but instinct, and the desert's quiet insistence, held you in place. Kadir moved beside you. Do not panic. Fear is natural. Control it, or it will be taken from you. The first trial began when the ground beneath the cliff quivered faintly. At first, it was just a vibration, almost imperceptible. Then, with a sudden roar that shook dust from the rocks above, a massive form rose from the depths. Its body was long, armored with jagged plates encrusted in black salt and stone. Its limbs ended in curved talons that could pierce stone. Its head, elongated and eyeless, pulsed with faint, glowing veins. The maw had awakened. The nomads moved instinctively, forming a protective circle between you and the creature. Shara's voice cut through the chaos. Focus. Your senses, not your panic. The creature struck first, its massive claw tearing through sand and stone. Warriors leaped aside, some leaping onto their mounts. Kadir shoved you behind a boulder, pressing you down. You could feel the vibrations of the maw's movements reverberating through your bones, each pulse a threat, each step a test. The battle was a blur of motion, sand, claws, firelight, screams, and the constant rhythm of your own terrified heartbeat. You wanted to flee, to hide, to vanish into the desert, but the talisman in your hand seemed to hum in response to the creature's presence. Its warmth guided your focus, pulling your senses taut and sharp. A sudden roar shook the cliffside. The creature lunged, and instinct overrode fear. You rolled aside, narrowly avoiding its strike, and realized something terrifying: this trial wasn't just about survival. It was about control, of fear, of thought, of body. The desert demanded mastery, not luck. The nomads fought with brutal efficiency, forcing the maw back toward the canyon. Its roars echoed like thunder. You barely kept pace, dodging falling rocks, leaping over cracks, feeling the desert itself pressing on your shoulders. Finally, with a coordinated effort, the nomads drove the creature back into the depths. The abyss swallowed it with a thunderous finality. Silence followed, broken only by the labored breathing of the warriors and the distant whisper of wind across the cliffs. Shira approached you, placing a hand on your shoulder. You survived the maw, she said. But survival is only the beginning. Kochisaria tests more than body and fear. It tests what you are willing to become. You looked out at the canyon, your heart still racing, and realized the desert had not finished teaching you. Not by far. The first light of dawn broke slowly over the cliffs, turning the sand and rock into molten gold. You were exhausted, every muscle screaming, yet the desert allowed no rest. The night's trial with the maw had left its mark, your palms blistered from gripping the talisman, your throat raw from shouting, your mind still thrumming with the creature's roars. But for the nomads, dawn was not a reward. It was simply another test. Shira waited at the edge of the cliff, her expression unreadable in the pale light. She did not speak at first, merely watched you approach, measuring each unsteady step. When you finally reached her, she gestured to the horizon where the dunes rolled endlessly, pale and treacherous in the morning sun. "The storm comes," she said. "And with it, the black suns." Your stomach dropped. You had seen the distant walls of black clouds forming over the dunes days before, but now they were closer, more tangible. The air ahead shimmered unnaturally, as though charged with some invisible energy. The nomads whispered urgently, checking weapons, murmuring prayers, and securing their mounts. Even the children were hushed, their wide eyes reflecting fear and understanding beyond their years. Kadir stepped beside you. "This is why we fight, not for glory, but for survival. The black suns are not like us. They take what the desert refuses to give freely. They do not respect its rules." You tried to process this. The black suns, nomads turned predators, driven mad by power or bloodlust, were approaching. They would not negotiate. They would not pause. They would kill, and you might be among them. Shira led the tribe toward a ridge overlooking a narrow pass, the only route that could give you a tactical advantage. From this height, you could see the swirling dust and the distant figures moving within it. The black suns were fast, organized, and merciless. They rode strange beasts, larger than camels, with long, sinewy necks and faces hidden behind bone masks. Their weapons gleamed in the harsh sunlight. "This is not a fight of strength," Shira said. "It is a fight of wit, timing, and courage. We will survive because we understand the desert better than they ever could." You nodded, your legs trembling. You had survived sand wraiths, the maw, the sun path, and the circle of teeth, but this was different. This was human cunning, paired with the desert's ferocity. There would be no talisman to guide you, no illusions to reveal the path. Only instinct, taught or born, could see you through. The black suns emerged from the storm like shadows, moving as a single, fluid mass. Their leader, tall and imposing, raised a curved spear and shouted a command, the sound carrying across the pass like a blade through the air. The nomads responded immediately, forming a line across the ridge, shields and spears braced. Kadir placed a hand on your shoulder. "Stay close. Watch. Learn. Survive." The first clash was thunderous. Sand and dust erupted as beasts collided, steel met bone, and the screams of humans and animals alike rang out. The ground shook beneath you. You felt the vibrations of hooves, the cracks of splintering wood, the ricochet of stones. Time slowed and accelerated at once. Each moment was a test. Move too early, you die. Move too late, you die. Hesitate, you die. You ducked instinctively as a spear flew past your head, embedding itself in the ground with a shriek of metal. Kadir shoved you behind a rock. From your hiding spot, you watched the nomads' tactics. They were not relying on brute force. They manipulated the terrain, used shadows and dunes to confuse the enemy, and struck only when the moment was perfect. Some black suns fell. Some escaped. Some, you realized with a shiver, would return. Shara's voice cut through the chaos. "Do not fear death. Fear hesitation." Your heart pounded. You had survived countless trials, but for the first time, you understood that in Kochisaria, survival was not about bravery or strength alone. It was about learning to act decisively, when everything inside you screamed to do otherwise. The battle raged, the storm pressing closer, the black suns relentless. You clutched the bone talisman tighter, feeling its warmth steady your trembling hands. For now, you were alive. For now, the desert had not claimed you. But you knew this was only the beginning. The real trial was not the creatures, not the black suns, it was understanding what it truly meant to survive in Kochisaria. The clash with the black sun stretched on as the sun rose higher, baking the dunes with relentless heat. The nomads moved like shadows along the ridges, striking swiftly and vanishing, leaving the enemy disoriented. Every movement was precise, almost choreographed. You followed Kadir as best as you could, clinging to his pace, trying not to stumble over the unforgiving sand. A sudden cry echoed from the flank. One of the nomads had been struck by a spear, rolling down the ridge with a grunt of pain. Without hesitation, another warrior leaped to intercept the attacker, blade flashing in the sunlight. You felt your stomach twist. Death was closer than ever, tangible, immediate. Kadir gripped your arm. Do not stare. Focus on movement, breathing, and timing. The desert is alive, and it will punish distraction. You forced yourself to follow his instructions, every nerve straining. Sand whipped around your face, stinging your eyes. The black sun's beasts thundered through the dunes, sending tremors through your legs. Each step felt precarious, like walking on a layer of cracking glass. The leader of the Black Suns appeared on a ridge opposite, silhouetted against the blazing sky. His mask gleamed with bone and metal, his eyes hidden, yet you felt their gaze. He raised a spear, signaling a coordinated attack. The desert seemed to respond to him, guiding their movements as though the dunes themselves had chosen sides. The nomads moved in perfect synchronization, drawing the enemy toward a narrow pass. You followed, heart hammering, trying to remember every lesson from the sun path and the maw. Trust your instincts. Do not hesitate. The desert favors decisiveness. A beast charged directly toward you, a long sinewy neck arching over your head. You stumbled, heart in your throat, but Kadir yanked you aside, throwing you behind a boulder. The creature's claws struck the rock with a deafening crack, sending sand and shards flying. You pressed yourself to the ground, trembling. From your vantage point, you watched the nomads turn the pass into a trap. Spears hidden in the dunes skewered the advancing beasts. Shadows and dust concealed sudden strikes. The Black Suns faltered, confusion spreading through their ranks. You realized that the desert wasn't just a battlefield, it was a weapon, an ally for those who knew its language. Shara's voice rose above the chaos. Use the terrain. Make them respect the dunes. A group of Black Suns tried to flank the tribe, but the nomads anticipated their move, cutting off their escape. You could see the strategy unfolding, a dance of life and death. Fear gripped you, but you also felt a strange surge of awe. These people had mastered survival at a level you could barely comprehend. Suddenly, a whirlwind of sand erupted from the basin, momentarily blinding both sides. Screams mingled with the roar of wind and the stamping of hooves. In that moment, everything became instinct. You ducked, rolled, and scrambled forward, following Kadir's lead. Every motion was a choice, hesitation meant death. When the wind settled, you realized the tide had turned. The Black Suns were retreating, their formations broken. The nomads pressed their advantage, driving them back toward the darkening horizon. The desert swallowed their figures, leaving silence in its wake. The tribe gathered again atop the ridge, checking each member, securing the wounded, and finally exhaling collectively. Shira approached you, her expression inscrutable. You survived another day, she said. But survival is not enough. To live in Kochisaria, you must understand the desert as it understands you. Only then will it grant you the right to call yourself one of us. You nodded, exhausted, sunburned, and trembling, but alive. Somehow, you had survived the Black Suns, the beasts, the illusions, the trials, and the relentless desert. Yet as you looked at the endless dunes ahead, dark clouds rolling like living mountains in the distance, a cold realization settled in your chest. This was only the beginning. The night after the battle with the Black Suns brought no relief. The desert was restless, and so were the nomads. Fires flickered across the camp, casting long, dancing shadows that seemed to whisper secrets of survival and death. Even in the glow of the flames, the dunes beyond appeared alive, shifting subtly as though watching. You couldn't sleep, your body ached, your mind raced, and every whisper of wind felt like a warning. Shira moved silently among the tents, checking on each member of the tribe. She paused beside you, her eyes reflecting the firelight. "You are stronger than I expected," she said softly, almost to herself. Then she looked directly at you. "But strength is not enough here. The desert demands more than survival. It demands understanding." You nodded, though you didn't know what she meant. How could you understand a place that seemed to breathe, think, and strike at will? Kadir approached and motioned for you to follow him outside the circle of fire. The air was cooler now, carrying the scent of distant storms. The dunes seemed to shimmer faintly, as if charged with electricity. "Listen," he said, his voice low. "The desert speaks if you know how to hear. Every shift in sand, every whisper of wind, it tells you what is coming." You closed your eyes and tried. At first, all you could hear was your own ragged breathing and the distant murmurs of the tribe. Then, slowly, patterns emerged. The sand hummed with subtle vibrations. The wind carried distant echoes. Even the stars seemed to pulse in rhythm with the dunes. Your heart raced as you realized, you could almost feel the desert moving beneath you. Kadir nodded. "Good. Now, we prepare for the storm. It will not wait. It will come, and it will test everything you have learned. You will see why even the black suns fear its approach." The next hours were a blur of preparation. The nomads reinforced their tents, checked weapons, and whispered prayers to the unseen forces that governed the dunes. You helped as best you could, though every motion reminded you of your fatigue. Yet, despite the exhaustion, there was a strange clarity in your mind. You began to see patterns in the chaos, understand the rhythm of movement, and anticipate what might come. As the sun dipped below the horizon, the first signs of the storm appeared. The clouds were massive, black walls rolling over the dunes, moving faster than the wind. A low, resonant rumble echoed across the desert. The ground vibrated beneath your feet. The storm wasn't just wind and sand, it was alive, a force shaped by the desert itself, carrying the weight of centuries. Shira gathered the tribe at the edge of the camp, her voice firm. "Tonight, we do not merely survive. We become part of the desert. Every step, every breath, every choice matters. Watch, learn, and do not hesitate. Hesitation is death." The first gusts hit, flinging sand and debris. Visibility dropped to mere meters. The tribe moved as one, each step deliberate, guided by instincts honed over generations. You followed Kadir, clinging to his movements, feeling the pulse of the storm through the soles of your feet. The desert's force pressed against you, testing your balance, your focus, your endurance. A shadow loomed suddenly from the storm. At first, it seemed like a trick of the swirling sands, but then you realized it was a massive dune WIRM, drawn by the storm's energy. Its body undulated beneath the sand, massive and serpentine, eyes glowing faintly through the darkness. The nomads did not flee. They anticipated, maneuvered, and struck with precision. You followed their lead, moving with the rhythm of the desert, dodging, rolling, and sensing the creature's approach before it fully revealed itself. The talisman in your hand pulsed warmly, guiding your senses, anchoring you to the reality of the storm and the desert's silent lessons. By the time the night ended, or at least the worst of it, the storm had passed. The dune WIRM had vanished, the winds died down, and the desert returned to its deceptive calm. The tribe gathered once more, exhausted but unbroken. Shira approached you, her eyes reflecting the fading firelight. "You have seen the desert's fury tonight," she said. "But survival is not enough. You must learn its patterns, its voice, its will. Only then will it accept you." You nodded, feeling both awe and dread. The desert had shown you its teeth, its claws, its storms, and its creatures. And yet, you sensed that the greatest challenges were still ahead. Dawn returned slowly, pale and trembling, as if the desert itself were still exhausted from the storm. The sand was scoured, sharp ridges gleaming in the faint light, and the air smelled of ozone and salt. You rose stiffly from your bedroll, muscles sore, lungs raw, but every instinct told you to keep moving. The desert allowed no pause. Shira met you at the edge of the camp. Her gaze swept across the dunes, noting every subtle movement, every whisper of sand. "The storm has passed," she said. "But it leaves behind consequences. Tracks, vulnerabilities, and new dangers. Kochisaria does not forgive negligence." Kadir gestured toward the dunes beyond the ridge. "We continue. The next path takes us to the shattered basin. Few outsiders survive it, and fewer understand it. It is where the desert tests patience and perception, where illusions and reality blur." You followed, still clutching the talisman, feeling its warmth anchor you to the world, a fragile tether against the desert's tricks. The tribe moved swiftly, forming a single, silent line across the dunes. The storm had revealed hidden rifts in the sand, new pitfalls, and subtle hazards. Every step had to be measured. Hours passed, the sun climbing higher, relentless, burning the horizon with pale yellow fire. The shattered basin appeared in the distance, an expanse of jagged rock spires and narrow chasms, twisted and blackened like the skeleton of some ancient, long-dead creature. From here, even the dunes seemed hostile, as though warning you that nothing in this place could be trusted. Shara's voice broke the silence. "The basin is alive. Its rocks shift at night, its winds carry illusions. It tests your mind as much as your body. You must walk carefully. See beyond the obvious. Trust instinct, not sight." You swallowed hard. You had survived predators, storms, and even human enemies, but this felt different. The desert was no longer external, it had become an internal trial. Every step carried the weight of perception, every sound a potential threat. The tribe advanced slowly, picking paths between jagged rocks, listening to subtle shifts in the sand and stone. Kadir remained beside you, guiding, correcting, and silently urging focus. "The shattered basin shows what the desert fears most," he murmured. "Chaos within. Hesitation. Panic. It feeds on them." At midday, the heat pressed down like a physical force. You felt every grain of sand beneath your feet, every vibration in the rock, every whisper of wind against your skin. The talisman pulsed faintly, a reminder that you were still tethered, still alive, still learning. Suddenly, a shadow moved across the jagged cliffs ahead. At first, you thought it was a trick of sunlight, but then you saw it, a pack of pale, sinewy creatures, smaller than the sand wraiths but faster, moving through narrow crevices, testing the nomad's formation. Their glowing eyes tracked every step. The tribe did not panic. They shifted, creating overlapping lines of protection, each warrior moving with precise timing, directing the children and weaker members behind safety. You followed, heart hammering, muscles screaming, but senses sharp. A creature lunged from the rocks. Kadir yanked you down, rolling aside as its claws struck where you had stood moments before. The desert had taught you, hesitation was death. You rose quickly, mimicking the nomads, moving with a newfound rhythm, understanding patterns you could barely articulate. By late afternoon, the tribe reached a narrow plateau overlooking the heart of the basin. The terrain twisted like shattered glass, cliffs and chasms reflecting a distorted world. Shira approached. "You are learning," she said quietly. "But understanding comes slowly. The desert tests patience first, strength second, and courage last. Remember this." You looked down into the abyss below, realizing the lessons of Kochisaria were far from over. Every step forward was a gamble, every choice weighed by instinct, fear, and the desert's will. And yet, somewhere deep inside, you felt the faintest spark of confidence. You had survived storms, beasts, black suns, and illusions, but the shattered basin awaited, and you knew it would demand far more. The shattered basin stretched before you like a fractured mirror of the desert's cruelty. Jagged rock spires jutted from the sand at impossible angles, narrow chasms yawned between them, and shadows twisted unnaturally under the dying sun. Every step you took felt like stepping into a living labyrinth, where the desert itself could shift the path beneath your feet. Shira led the tribe forward, her movements deliberate, her eyes scanning every crevice. "Watch the ground," she said. "Not the shadows. The desert tricks the eyes first, the feet second." You followed, heart pounding. The talisman in your hand pulsed warmly, its rhythm oddly aligned with the vibrations under your feet. You realized it wasn't merely guiding you, it was attuning you to the desert itself, the subtle cues of sand and stone that whispered warnings and directions. Suddenly, a sharp crack split the air. A section of rock collapsed into a chasm, revealing a hidden fissure beneath. Kadir shoved you aside just in time. You stumbled, chest heaving, heart hammering. The desert tested you again, showing that every moment of distraction could be fatal. The tribe moved like shadows across broken terrain, each step synchronized, each motion measured. Children and weaker members were shielded by overlapping lines of warriors. You mimicked them, your senses stretched to their limits, learning to anticipate rather than react. Hours passed, and the basin seemed to grow more alive. Winds carried whispers of movement, shadows shifted in impossible patterns, and the jagged rocks appeared to lean closer as if watching your every motion. The desert played with perception, bending reality to test your focus. You forced yourself to trust the rhythm you had learned, the subtle thrum of the talisman, the vibrations of sand beneath your feet, the calculated movements of the tribe. Then, without warning, a new danger emerged. From a narrow chasm to your right, a pack of thin, serpentine creatures slithered into view. Their bodies were pale and segmented, eyes faintly glowing. They moved silently, fluidly, stalking the tribe. Shira signaled instantly. The warriors adjusted positions, forming a protective perimeter. Spears and slings were raised, rocks shifted strategically to create barriers. You pressed yourself against a spire, muscles coiled, heart racing. One creature lunged. Kadir yanked you down just in time. Its claws scraped the stone where you had stood moments before. You realized the desert had taught you well, hesitation, fear, distraction, all were deadly. Every instinct needed to be precise, controlled. The battle was brief but intense. The nomads used the terrain expertly, funneling the creatures into narrow gaps where their movement was restricted. They struck quickly, efficiently, and withdrew, leaving the pack disoriented. One by one, the serpents retreated back into the chasms, their glowing eyes fading into the shadows. Shira approached you afterward, her expression unreadable. "You survived," she said. "But survival alone is not mastery. The shattered basin tests the mind more than the body. Every shadow, every fissure, every echo is a lesson. Learn it, or it will consume you." You exhaled slowly, feeling the weight of exhaustion and the thrill of having survived another trial. Yet as you looked across the fractured landscape, you knew the lessons of Kochisaria were far from over. The desert was vast, ancient, and relentless. Somewhere beyond the next ridge, more trials waited. And you understood that each one would demand more than courage, more than strength, you would need understanding, instinct, and the desert's acceptance to endure. The nomads moved onward, shadows against the jagged rocks, and you followed, gripping the talisman, feeling its warmth, and steeling yourself for whatever the basin, and Kochisaria, had in store next. The afternoon sun burned harshly over the shattered basin, casting long, jagged shadows that seemed to stretch and shift as if alive. Every step was a negotiation with the desert, one wrong move, one moment of distraction, could send you tumbling into a fissure or trap you in an impossible crevice. The nomads moved with uncanny precision, weaving through the rocks and sand as though guided by some secret rhythm only they could perceive. Shara's voice broke the tense silence. "The basin teaches patience. You cannot rush here, but you cannot linger either. Hesitate, and the desert will punish you." You followed closely behind Kadir, muscles aching, lungs burning from the constant exertion, yet every nerve on high alert. The talisman in your hand pulsed faintly, a constant reminder that the desert was alive, that it felt and judged every movement you made. You tried to synchronize your breathing with its rhythm, using it to steady your pounding heart. Suddenly, a low rumble echoed through the chasms. At first, you thought it was the wind, but Kadir froze, signaling the tribe to halt. The ground beneath your feet vibrated faintly, like a heartbeat. From the shadows of the rocks, a massive form emerged, another desert predator, pale and sinuous, with segmented armor that reflected the fading sunlight. Its eyes glowed faintly, scanning the landscape with unnerving intelligence. "The shattered basin is never empty," Kadir murmured. "It collects all things the desert has discarded, or grown stronger from." The creature moved toward the tribe, each motion fluid and deliberate. The nomads responded instantly, forming protective formations and using the terrain to their advantage. You mirrored their movements as best you could, rolling behind rocks, staying low, and moving only when absolutely necessary. The desert had trained your mind as much as your body, instinct had become survival. A sudden screech pierced the air as another predator joined the first, their coordinated movement indicating hunting intelligence far beyond ordinary creatures. Spears flashed, rocks flew, and the nomads executed perfect timing, striking and retreating, using the jagged terrain to confound the predators. You watched and learned, copying every subtle motion, every measured response. Despite the chaos, the talisman guided you, its warmth syncing with the vibrations under your feet. You began to sense patterns in the predator's movements, subtle signs that indicated when they would strike, when they would pause. Your mind sharpened, focusing on rhythm, timing, and anticipation instead of fear. Hours passed in tense struggle, with the sun lowering and shadows deepening. One by one, the predators retreated, confused and driven off by the nomads' mastery of the terrain and their unyielding discipline. The tribe exhaled collectively, though the tension remained. Every member knew that the desert had allowed them to survive this encounter, but it could strike again at any moment. Shira approached you once more, her expression stern yet approving. "You survived another trial. But remember, every day, the desert changes. Every creature, every gust of wind, every shadow is a test. Understanding is not enough. You must feel it, become part of it. Only then will you endure." You looked out across the fractured rocks and shifting sands, exhausted but alert. Each lesson had been brutal, each survival a small victory, but the desert's vastness reminded you that the greatest trials were still ahead. Kochisaria was not conquered, it was endured, moment by moment, day by day. The tribe moved onward, shadows gliding over broken rock and sand. You followed, gripping the talisman tightly, aware that the next step could be the most dangerous yet. The evening descended quietly, but the shattered basin offered no comfort. The jagged rocks threw long shadows across the sand, and the air carried a subtle vibration, like the desert itself was shifting in anticipation. Every step felt heavier, each movement measured not only against the terrain but against the unseen forces that seemed to guide the basin. Shira moved ahead, scanning the fractured landscape with practiced ease. She paused, turning to speak to the tribe in a low voice. "We must cross the mirror chasm before night fully falls. The shadows there are alive. They test not the body, but the mind." You followed Kadir, who whispered, "Focus on what is real, and trust the rhythm of the desert. The mirror chasm feeds on doubt. Hesitation is death." The path to the chasm narrowed as the rocks leaned inward, creating a twisting corridor where shadows stretched unnaturally. You pressed yourself against the nearest spire, every muscle tense, your mind straining to distinguish illusions from reality. The talisman pulsed in your hand, faint warmth radiating through your fingers, guiding your instincts as you took each careful step. A sudden movement in the corner of your eye made you flinch. A pale, serpentine predator slithered across the sand, moving with impossible stealth. You froze, heart hammering. Kadir grabbed your shoulder, pressing you down. The creature passed, unaware of your presence, and continued along the chasm floor. "The desert teaches patience," Kadir said quietly. "The mirror chasm rewards focus and punishes distraction. Every shadow is a lesson." You nodded, trying to steady your breath. The chasm widened ahead, revealing pools of shallow water, reflecting the jagged spires and deepening shadows like dark mirrors. It was beautiful, yet deceptive. Each reflection distorted the landscape, creating illusions of depth and movement. One false step could send you tumbling into the reflective pools or into a hidden fissure. Shira led the tribe with precision, each step deliberate, each movement synchronized. You mimicked her, forcing your mind to ignore the disorienting reflections and focus on the terrain beneath your feet. Every sense was heightened, the vibrations of sand, the subtle shifts of light, the faint echoes of movement. Suddenly, a shadow lunged from the mirrored surface, a creature unlike any you had seen. Its body was long and translucent, blending with the reflections, making it difficult to track. Spears and rocks flew as the nomads responded with practiced efficiency, striking the creature and driving it back into the shadows. You crouched low, moving as silently as possible, every step guided by instinct and the pulsing warmth of the talisman. You realized, for the first time, that survival here was no longer about fear or strength, it was about harmony with the desert. You were learning its language, its patterns, and its unforgiving logic. The tribe pressed forward, crossing the mirror chasm carefully, each member alert, every motion precise. When the last reflection had been passed and the shadows settled, Shira approached you. "You have learned to walk with the desert," she said softly. "But walking is not enough. You must move as it moves, think as it thinks, or it will claim you." Exhausted, but alive, you looked back at the darkened chasm, the reflections shimmering eerily in the fading light. Kochisaria had tested you again, and you had survived, but you understood more than ever that this was only the beginning. The tribe set up a temporary camp on a narrow ledge overlooking the basin. Fires flickered, casting long, watchful shadows. You sank to the ground, muscles aching, mind still racing, aware that every dawn brought new trials, and the desert would continue to test your resolve, your instincts, and your very will to survive. Night fell over the shattered basin, and with it, an oppressive silence. The wind carried faint echoes, as if the desert itself were whispering secrets meant only for those who could hear. The nomads huddled near small fires, their faces illuminated in flickering light, each shadow seeming to hold a warning. Sleep was unnecessary, even dangerous. The desert was never truly still. Shira moved among the tribe, checking on each member. When she approached you, her gaze was intense. "Tonight, the basin tests perception," she said. "Not strength, not speed. Your mind will be your weapon, and your weakness. Every shadow can deceive. Every echo can mislead. Trust yourself, or the desert will take you." You nodded, gripping the talisman tightly. Its warmth seemed stronger in the night, pulsing in time with the faint vibrations of the rocks beneath your feet. You realized that the desert had become more than a landscape, it was alive, watching, guiding, and testing. Kadir motioned for you to follow him to a narrow ledge overlooking the basin floor. The shadows there were deep and unnerving, creating shapes that twisted and moved in impossible ways. Your heart raced as you tried to distinguish the real from the illusion. A sudden screech shattered the silence. From a shadowed fissure, a group of pale, sinewy predators emerged, their movements fluid and deliberate. They seemed to glide over the sand, bodies almost invisible in the darkness. The tribe reacted instantly, forming protective formations, their weapons ready. You mirrored them, crouched low, senses alert. The creatures struck with speed and precision, testing the nomads' defenses. Spears whistled through the air, rocks crashed, and the nomads moved with uncanny coordination. You followed, instinct guiding your actions more than thought. Every vibration, every subtle shift in sand and stone, warned of danger before it arrived. Time stretched and compressed. The predators lunged and retreated, shadows merged and separated, and the basin itself seemed to pulse with the rhythm of life and death. You realized that hesitation could mean instant death, but too much aggression would draw the creature's attention. Balance, focus, and trust in instinct were the only ways to survive. The nomads slowly drove the predators back toward the edges of the basin. Each movement was calculated, every step rehearsed, yet unpredictable. The desert guided them, revealing paths and opportunities invisible to outsiders. You followed, heart pounding, muscles trembling, but mind clearer than ever. At last, the creatures retreated into the shadows, disappearing into the rocks. Silence fell once more, thick and heavy, broken only by the faint crackle of the fires. Shira approached, placing a hand on your shoulder. "You survived the night," she said. "But perception alone is not enough. Kochisaria tests every part of you, mind, body, and spirit. You must continue learning, adapting, and moving in harmony with the desert. Only then will it allow you to endure." You exhaled slowly, feeling the weight of exhaustion and realization. Each trial had been more demanding than the last, and yet, you were still alive. The desert had spared you once again, but you knew it would continue to test you, each moment sharper, each danger greater. The fires burned low as the tribe settled for a brief rest. You stared into the shadows, aware that the shattered basin held countless more secrets, traps, and creatures. Survival here was not a certainty, it was a constant negotiation with the desert itself. And as you closed your eyes for a short, careful moment, you understood one undeniable truth: in Kochisaria, every day was a fight, every night a lesson, and no one survived without respect for the desert's relentless will. Dawn broke with an eerie stillness over the shattered basin. The jagged spires and fractured rocks glistened faintly, coated in dew and dust stirred by the night's wind. The desert was quiet, but you knew better than to trust its silence. In Kochisaria, calm was always a precursor to danger. Shira gathered the tribe at the edge of a narrow ridge overlooking a deep canyon. "Today," she said, her voice low but firm, "we crossed the spine of shadows. Few survive it the first time. It tests balance, perception, and endurance. One misstep, one hesitation, and the desert will claim you." You swallowed hard, gripping the talisman. Your body ached from endless trials, but your mind felt strangely alert. The desert had taught you lessons the night could never impart: how to read the vibrations beneath your feet, how to anticipate unseen movements, and how to trust instinct over fear. The spine of shadows was exactly as Shira described, a narrow ridge of rock and sand that twisted like a jagged serpent across the canyon. Below, the abyss yawned impossibly deep, shadows stretching like living things. A single misstep would mean a fall into darkness. Kadir moved beside you. "Step lightly. Move with the rhythm of the desert. Hesitation is as deadly as carelessness." You followed, muscles tense, every sense alert. The ridge narrowed and widened unpredictably, forcing constant adjustment of footing. Shadows shifted as the sun rose higher, creating illusions of gaps and ledges where none existed. You realized the desert was testing perception more than strength. Suddenly, a roar echoed from the canyon below, a sandwyrm, long and armored, moving silently yet powerfully through the rocks. The tribe halted, forming a defensive line. Shira gestured, and the nomads used their knowledge of the terrain to distract and guide the creature away, leading it toward a narrow gorge where its massive body could not follow. You pressed yourself low, gripping the talisman. Its warmth pulsed gently, sinking with the vibrations through the rock beneath your feet. You realized it was more than a guide, it was a tether to the desert, helping you distinguish reality from illusion. The ridge narrowed further. One false move, and the abyss below would end your journey. Your legs screamed with fatigue, but each step demanded focus. The desert seemed to hum beneath your feet, testing every instinct, every reflex. From the shadows, smaller predators, pale, sinewy creatures, slithered across the rocks, testing your concentration. You froze, then rolled and moved exactly as Kadir had taught, letting instinct guide each motion. The creatures passed harmlessly by, misjudging your timing. Hours passed in tense, silent motion. The tribe moved as one, shadows flowing across the jagged spine. Finally, the far edge appeared, a plateau leading to a safer path. You exhaled, heart pounding, aware that you had survived one of the basin's most dangerous stretches. Shira approached, placing a hand on your shoulder. "You have walked the spine," she said. "But survival is not mastery. Kochisaria tests everything, the body, mind, heart. And the trials ahead will demand more than you think you can give." You looked back at the narrow ridge, the abyss yawning below, and understood the truth. Every step in this desert was a lesson, every shadow a potential threat, and every day a test of endurance, cunning, and instinct. The tribe gathered on the plateau, resting briefly. You clenched the talisman, feeling its warmth, and prepared yourself. The shattered basin still held countless dangers, and the desert was far from finished with you. The plateau offered only a momentary respite. The sun was high, relentless, and the air shimmered with heat. Even here, in this brief calm, the desert whispered warnings through the wind, carrying the faint scent of unseen predators and shifting sand. You had learned to listen. Every breath, every subtle vibration beneath your feet, was a message. Shira gathered the tribe. "Ahead lies the hollow maze," she said, her tone grave. "It is older than memory, shaped by centuries of wind, water, and stone. It tests cunning, perception, and willpower. Few navigate it without losing their minds, or their lives." You felt a chill despite the heat. The hollow maze, twisting canyons and jagged rock formations, was rumored even among the nomads to be merciless. Every step you had taken so far had prepared you, yet a deep part of your mind screamed that nothing could fully prepare you for what lay ahead. Kadir motioned for you to follow. "The maze is alive," he whispered. "It watches. It judges. It punishes hesitation and rewards instinct. Trust the talisman, trust yourself, and move as one with the desert." The entrance to the hollow maze was a narrow canyon that twisted sharply out of sight. Shadows pooled deep in the corners, and every rock seemed precarious, threatening to shift beneath your weight. The talisman pulsed faintly in your hand, a rhythm that aligned with the desert's subtle vibrations. As the tribe entered, the maze seemed to close behind them. The light shifted strangely, creating illusions of paths that did not exist. Your heart raced with each false corridor. You had to distinguish what was real from what was reflection, shadow, or mirage. One wrong turn, and you could be trapped, or worse. Suddenly, a whispering wind rose from the depths of the maze. It carried a sound like laughter, hollow and unnatural, echoing off the rocks. Pale, sinuous predators slithered from hidden crevices, testing your focus. You froze for a heartbeat, then moved exactly as Kadir had taught, low, deliberate, precise. The creatures paused, misjudging your presence, and slithered past. The path twisted sharply again, dropping into a shadowed hollow where the sand shimmered with a faint phosphorescence. You realized the desert had created another test. The ground itself seemed alive, shifting subtly to destabilize the unwary. Every step required calculation, courage, and trust in instinct over sight. The tribe pressed on, moving as one unit. Shara's voice guided them through the disorienting corridors. You followed, muscles screaming, lungs burning, mind stretched to its limits. Every false shadow, every whisper of wind, every shifting stone was a potential trap. Yet, for the first time, you sensed a rhythm, an underlying order to the chaos. The desert spoke, and you were beginning to hear. Hours passed. The hollow maze tested endurance, focus, and perception to the extreme. Finally, a faint glow appeared ahead, signaling the exit to a higher ridge. The tribe moved toward it, unbroken but exhausted. You exhaled, feeling the tension drain slowly from your body, aware that survival was only one part of the lesson. Shira approached you at the ridge. "You have navigated the maze," she said. "But Kochisaria is not merely survived. It is understood, respected, and integrated into your being. Only then will you endure what comes next." You looked out over the shattered basin below, the jagged rocks glowing in the late afternoon sun. The desert had pushed you to your limits, and yet it had spared you, allowing you to learn, adapt, and survive. The next trials awaited, and you knew that each one would demand more than courage, more than strength, more than instinct. Kochisaria would continue to test every fiber of your being. Night fell over the dune labyrinth, and the desert transformed into a place of whispered threats and subtle movements. The winds carried fine sand that stung your skin, and shadows shifted unnaturally in the firelight of the nomad camp. Sleep was a luxury you could not afford. Every sound, every ripple in the sand, could signal danger. Shira moved among the tribe, checking positions and calming those who were restless. When she reached you, her eyes were intense. "Tonight, the desert tests awareness," she said. "Not speed, not strength. Awareness. You must feel it in every breath, in every vibration under your feet. The labyrinth has eyes, and it watches." You nodded, clutching the talisman. Its warmth pulsed faintly in the night, a subtle but steady guide. You could feel the desert around you, alive and watching, communicating in ways that defied words. It was more than sand and rock, it was an intelligence, ancient and patient, demanding respect. Kadir motioned for you to follow him to a ridge overlooking the shifting dunes. The moon cast a pale glow, illuminating the contours of the labyrinth. The paths you had taken earlier seemed different now, unfamiliar and treacherous. Every dune could conceal a hidden pit, a predator, or an illusion. Suddenly, movement caught your eye. A pack of pale, sinuous creatures slid silently over the dunes, eyes glinting faintly in the moonlight. The tribe froze, weapons ready, and then moved with practiced precision, using the undulating sand to mask their presence and mislead the predators. You crouched low, mirroring their motions. Every instinct screamed to flee, yet your mind held firm. You had learned to synchronize with the desert, to anticipate its rhythms, and to trust the talisman's subtle guidance. Hesitation here could mean death, but overreaction would draw attention. Balance was everything. The predators tested the tribe, darting close and retreating, probing weaknesses. Each time, the nomads responded flawlessly, forming barriers and using the shifting dunes to their advantage. You followed, timing every motion, sensing patterns in the creature's movements, and moving as part of a larger flow. Hours passed in tense, silent observation. The creatures eventually retreated, confused and outmaneuvered, leaving the desert once again quiet. The tribe exhaled, though tension lingered like a shadow over the sand. Every member knew the desert had spared them tonight, but tomorrow could bring even greater trials. Shira approached you quietly. "You have survived the night," she said softly. "But survival is not mastery. Awareness alone is not enough. You must integrate with the desert, move with its rhythms, think as it thinks. Only then will you endure the challenges ahead." You looked across the shifting dunes, moonlight glinting off pale sand and jagged rocks. The dune labyrinth had tested your perception, patience, and instincts. You were alive, but you knew the desert had far more in store: creatures, illusions, storms, and challenges that would demand more than courage or strength. The nomad settled briefly, fires low, and the desert whispered around you, a living, breathing presence that would continue to test, teach, and demand respect. You clutched the talisman, feeling its warmth, and steeled yourself for the trials yet to come. Survival here was not a certainty, it was earned, moment by moment, step by step. The morning light arrived dim and orange, casting long, distorted shadows across the dunes of the labyrinth. The desert was deceptively calm, its silence carrying a latent tension that warned of imminent challenges. You rose, stiff and sore, muscles screaming from days of relentless trials, but your mind was sharper than ever. Every ripple in the sand, every faint vibration beneath your feet, demanded attention. Shira gathered the tribe at the edge of a particularly steep dune. "Today," she said, her voice measured and serious, "we navigate the whispering corridor. Few who enter emerge unchanged. It tests your focus, your perception, and your ability to trust the desert, above all else, your instincts." Kadir stood beside you, his eyes scanning the shifting sands. "The corridor is subtle but deadly," he whispered. It lures the unwary with illusions. It twists your senses. You must move deliberately, feel the desert's rhythm, and let instinct guide you. The whispering corridor was exactly that, a narrow passage flanked by dunes that seemed to twist and fold into each other, creating a labyrinthine path. The wind passed through the corridor with a haunting sound, a continuous murmur that seemed almost like voices whispering your doubts and fears. Your heart quickened as you realized how easily it could unsettle the mind. The tribe began moving forward, each step measured. Shira led, her motions deliberate and precise. You followed Kadir, concentrating on the talisman in your hand. Its faint warmth pulsed rhythmically, guiding your instincts and helping you distinguish reality from illusion. Every shadow, every sound, every subtle shift in the sand became significant. Suddenly, a movement in the corner of your eye, shifting shadows or predators, you could not tell, made your chest tighten. Kadir nudged you forward, whispering, "Do not hesitate. The desert rewards decisiveness, not fear." A sand worm slithered across the corridor, body sleek and pale, eyes glowing faintly. The nomads reacted instinctively, guiding it with precise movements, luring it into a shallow pit where its mass became trapped temporarily. You mirrored their actions, crouched low, timing each movement perfectly. The desert's rhythm pulsed through your senses, and you felt a strange harmony forming, as if you were part of the land itself. Hours stretched as the corridor twisted endlessly, playing tricks on perception. Each false dune, each mirrored shadow, tested your focus. The talisman pulsed consistently, keeping your senses aligned. You realized that survival here depended not on strength, but on awareness, precision, and trust in instinct. By late afternoon, the corridor opened into a broader section of the labyrinth. The tribe exhaled collectively, but the tension remained. The desert had allowed passage, but the lessons were far from complete. Shira approached you, her gaze unreadable. "You have passed the whispering corridor," she said. "But remember, endurance is only part of the equation. Kochisaria tests the mind, the body, and the spirit. Only by integrating with its rhythm will you endure what comes next." You looked across the dunes, the labyrinthine paths twisting endlessly into the horizon. Each step had been a negotiation with the desert itself, a test of perception, instinct, and will. You were alive, but you understood that the greatest challenges still lay ahead, waiting patiently in the shifting sands. The desert heat was relentless by midday, yet the whispering corridor behind you had left an unusual calm in the air. The tribe moved steadily, each step deliberate, muscles aching but minds sharp. The shattered basin sprawled ahead, and beyond it, the next trial awaited, an expanse the nomads called the Shimmering Flats. Shira paused at the edge of the dunes, her gaze sweeping over the horizon. "The flats are treacherous," she said. "The sand reflects the sun like water, creating mirages that can disorient the unprepared. Every illusion is a test. Only those who trust instinct over sight will survive." Kadir motioned for you to follow closely. "Do not rely solely on your eyes," he warned. "Feel the desert beneath your feet. The sands themselves will guide you if you know how to listen." The shimmering flats stretched endlessly, pale sand gleaming under the harsh sun. Waves of heat rose in distortions, creating shimmering illusions of distant water or solid ground where none existed. Even seasoned nomads walked cautiously, adjusting their paths continuously. Your talisman pulsed faintly in your hand, its warmth syncing with the subtle vibrations beneath the sand. You focused, sensing the difference between stable and unstable ground, real dunes and mirages. Every step required calculation, observation, and instinct. Suddenly, a gust of wind lifted sand in a swirling vortex, revealing a pack of pale, sinewy creatures. They moved with astonishing speed, weaving between dunes and casting distorted shadows that merged with the heat mirages. The tribe responded instantly, using precise formations to protect one another while navigating the deceptive terrain. You mirrored their movements, crouching and rolling where necessary, timing each action with the rhythm of the desert. Your instincts guided you more than thought, hesitation could mean being trapped in a trap or misjudging the deceptive sand patterns. Hours passed under the scorching sun, every dune and shadow a lesson. You began to notice subtle cues, slight changes in sand texture, faint vibrations signaling approaching predators, and variations in wind carrying both real and false sounds. The shimmering flats were not merely obstacles, they were teachers, demanding respect and acute awareness. By late afternoon, the tribe reached a series of narrow ridges, signaling the edge of the flats. Exhausted but intact, you realized that the desert's challenge was not simply to survive physically, but to train perception, patience, and instinct. Every mirage, every shadow, every shifting grain of sand was part of the lesson. Shira approached you, her expression serious. "You have endured the flats," she said. "But survival is temporary. Mastery comes from understanding the desert's rhythm and respecting its will. Only then will you endure the trials yet to come." You exhaled, feeling both relief and unease. The desert had tested you again, and you had survived, but the shattered basin still loomed in your mind, and beyond it, Kochisaria had far greater challenges waiting. The tribe set up a short camp on the ridges, fires small against the fading light. You gripped the talisman, feeling its warmth, and prepared mentally for the trials that tomorrow, and the desert itself, would demand. Night fell over the shimmering flats, and the desert became a realm of whispers and shifting shadows. The wind stirred fine sand, creating soft hissing sounds, and the moonlight reflected off the pale dunes, magnifying every illusion. Sleep was a fragile luxury, the desert's eyes never closed. Shira moved among the tribe, inspecting their positions and checking the fires. When she reached you, her gaze was steady and serious. "Tonight, the flats test patience and perception," she said. "The sand is not empty. Every ripple, every shimmer, carries meaning. Learn to read it, or it will deceive you." Kadir gestured for you to follow him to a low ridge. From here, the desert stretched like a living ocean, its surface glittering with mirages. You could see shapes shifting in the sand, some real, some illusions, blending into a fluid, deceptive landscape. "The desert speaks in subtle ways," Kadir said. "Wind, vibration, sand texture, listen. Do not trust sight alone. Trust instinct." As the tribe began moving through the flats, the heat waves distorted distances and shapes. Shadows appeared where none existed, and dune ridges shifted subtly, creating false paths. One misstep could send you into a hidden pit or trap. You focused, feeling each vibration beneath your feet and following the talisman's pulse, syncing with the desert's rhythm. Suddenly, movement in the distance caught your eye, a pack of pale, sinewy predators sliding silently across the dunes. Their glowing eyes reflected in the mirages, making them appear larger and more numerous than they were. The tribe immediately adjusted formation, using their knowledge of the terrain to confuse and mislead the creatures. You followed, crouched low, rolling and leaping over unstable sand patches. Your mind was stretched to its limits, balancing observation with instinct, movement with anticipation. The desert was teaching you to become part of it, to move not against it, but with it. Hours passed in tense navigation. The predators tested the tribe repeatedly, darting in and out of mirages, but each time they were outmaneuvered. You realized the flats were more than a physical challenge, they were a psychological test. They forced your mind to distinguish reality from illusion, to remain calm under disorienting conditions. By midnight, the pack had retreated, and the tribe gathered briefly on a narrow ridge. Shira approached you, placing a hand on your shoulder. "You have survived the flats," she said quietly. "But endurance is not enough. You must continue to integrate with the desert. Its lessons are ongoing, and its tests never cease." You exhaled, feeling exhaustion in every muscle, but also a strange clarity. The desert had taught patience, focus, and harmony. Each illusion navigated, each predator evaded, each dune crossed had sharpened your instincts and mind. The tribe settled for a cautious rest, fires small against the pale moonlight. You gripped the talisman, feeling its warmth pulse in rhythm with the desert, knowing that tomorrow would bring new trials, and survival would demand all that you had learned, and more. The first light of dawn revealed the shimmering flats in all their deceptive glory. The sand glittered under the rising sun, each ripple hiding potential danger, each reflection creating illusions that challenged perception. The desert was patient, waiting for the unwary, the unprepared, the distracted. Shira gathered the tribe at the edge of a narrow dune. "Ahead lies the hollow expanse," she said. "It is vast, open, and unforgiving." The flats tested perception. The expanse will test endurance, decision-making, and adaptation. Every step must be deliberate, or you will be swallowed by the desert. Kadir moved beside you. "The desert will test your limits today. Watch the wind, watch the sand, watch yourself. Hesitation and overconfidence are equal threats." The hollow expanse stretched endlessly before you, pale sand rising and falling in small undulating waves. The heat shimmered, creating mirages that made distant dunes appear impossibly tall or fluid, like molten gold. Every path seemed unstable, every shadow deceptive. The tribe advanced cautiously, moving in a single line that shifted as needed to avoid pitfalls or illusions. You followed closely, relying on the talisman's pulse and the subtle vibrations beneath your feet to guide each step. The desert's rhythm was faint but discernible, those who ignored it risked being lost. A sudden ripple in the sand alerted you. Pale, sinewy predators emerged, moving with stealth and precision. They slithered across the dunes, their glowing eyes reflecting the morning sun. The tribe reacted instantly, forming protective lines and using their knowledge of the terrain to mislead the creatures. You mirrored their actions, crouching, leaping, and rolling with instinctive timing. Hours passed in a grueling rhythm. The expanse seemed endless, each dune a trial, each shimmering mirage a test of focus and judgment. The heat drained strength, and your body ached, yet the desert sharpened the mind, forcing acute awareness of every subtle cue, the shift of sand beneath a foot, the vibration of a distant predator, the faint change of wind across a ridge. By late afternoon, a high ridge appeared, signaling the edge of the expanse. The tribe exhaled collectively, though fatigue was evident in every movement. Shira approached you, her expression serious. "You have crossed the hollow expanse," she said. "The desert has spared you again, but this is not mastery. Each trial strengthens, sharpens, and tests. Tomorrow will demand more." You sank to the sand briefly, catching your breath, muscles trembling. The desert had been harsh, relentless, yet it had taught endurance, patience, perception, and instinct. Every illusion navigated, every predator evaded, every unstable dune crossed had been a lesson hard-earned. As the tribe set up a minimal camp, fires flickering against the pale evening, you held the talisman tightly. Its warmth pulsed faintly, a reminder that the desert's lessons were ongoing and that tomorrow, as always, would bring new challenges. Survival here was earned, not given, and the hollow expanse had made that more clear than ever. Night settled over the hollow expanse, and the desert transformed into a realm of shadows and whispers. The pale sand glimmered under the moonlight, mirages dancing across the dunes, distorting distance and height. Every shadow seemed alive, every ripple in the sand a potential trap. Sleep was a dangerous indulgence here. Shira moved quietly among the tribe, checking their positions and the small fires. When she reached you, her gaze was sharp and unwavering. "Tonight, the expanse tests endurance and awareness," she said. "The desert will hide threats in plain sight. You must trust your instincts, your senses, and the rhythm of the land itself." Kadir gestured toward a low dune ridge. "The desert speaks in subtle vibrations and faint signs," he whispered. "Listen. Feel. Do not rely on what your eyes tell you alone." The tribe began moving cautiously, shadows blending with the shifting sand. The moonlight created illusions that made stable dunes appear unstable, and distant ridges seemed to move closer or farther with each step. You felt your heart hammering, mind stretched to its limits, relying on the talisman to guide your instincts. Suddenly, a soft hissing sound made you freeze. From the crest of a nearby dune, pale, sinuous predators emerged. Their bodies moved with fluid precision, eyes glowing faintly. The nomads reacted instantly, forming protective barriers and guiding the creatures with calculated movements. You crouched low, timing each action perfectly, moving in rhythm with the desert itself. Hours passed in tense navigation. The creatures tested the tribe repeatedly, darting in and out of shadows, probing weaknesses, but each time they were outmaneuvered. The desert's rhythm pulsed faintly beneath your feet, helping you anticipate traps and deceptive patterns in the shifting sand. By midnight, the predators had retreated, and the tribe paused on a narrow dune ridge. Shira approached you quietly. "You have survived the night," she said. "But survival alone is not enough. You must continue integrating with the desert. Its lessons are ongoing, and the next day will demand more than tonight." Exhausted but alert, you sat in the sand, feeling the talisman's warmth pulse gently in your hand. The hollow expanse had taught endurance, focus, and harmony with the desert. Every illusion crossed, every predator avoided, every deceptive dune navigated had been a lesson in perception, patience, and instinct. The tribe settled for a cautious rest, fires flickering low. You stared into the moonlit desert, knowing the trials were far from over. The shattered basin, the labyrinth, the flats, and now the expanse had tested everything, body, mind, and spirit. Yet Kochisaria still had far greater challenges ahead, and survival here was not granted, it was earned. The first light of dawn cast a pale glow over the hollow expanse, revealing subtle undulations in the sand and distant mirages that shimmered like water. The desert seemed calm, almost inviting, yet the nomads knew better. Kochisaria had no mercy for the unprepared, and even the slightest lapse could be fatal. Shira gathered the tribe at the edge of a high dune. "Ahead lies the glassed flats," she said, her voice steady but carrying the weight of warning. "The sand here has been baked and polished by centuries of wind and sun. It reflects the sky and the sun in ways that confuse sight, distort distance, and create illusions that trap the careless. Today, perception and balance will be tested like never before." Kadir stood beside you, his eyes scanning the horizon. "The desert will challenge your judgment," he whispered. "Step carefully. Trust instinct and the talisman. Let the rhythm of the land guide you. Do not be deceived by reflections or false paths." The glassed flats stretched before you, an endless expanse of pale, glimmering sand. Sunlight bounced off the polished surface, creating a kaleidoscope of distorted images. Dunes appeared taller, flatter, or even liquid in some illusions, and shadows shifted unpredictably. Every step required calculation and focus. The tribe advanced cautiously, moving in a precise formation. Every member was alert, muscles tense, eyes scanning for predators and traps. You followed closely, talisman in hand, feeling its warmth and pulsing rhythm as a subtle guide. Each vibration through the sand seemed amplified here, helping you distinguish stability from illusion. Suddenly, movement caught your eye. A pack of pale, sinewy predators slithered across the flats, their bodies blending seamlessly with the shimmering sand. Their glowing eyes reflected in the polished surface, creating multiple false images of each creature. The nomads reacted instantly, forming defensive patterns while using the reflections and ridges to confuse the predators. You mirrored their movements, crouched low, timing every step with instinct and precision. The desert seemed alive beneath your feet, its subtle shifts guiding your decisions, warning of hidden dangers, and amplifying your awareness. Hesitation or overconfidence could mean instant death. Hours passed as the tribe navigated the flats, every illusion, shadow, and reflected image demanding full attention. The heat was exhausting, yet your mind remained razor-sharp, attuned to the desert's rhythm. You realized that survival here required more than courage or strength, it demanded harmony with the land, awareness of subtle cues, and trust in instincts honed by constant trial. By late afternoon, the tribe reached the edge of a narrow ridge marking the end of the glassed flats. Exhausted but alive, you exhaled, muscles trembling from effort. Shira approached, her gaze serious. You have endured the flats, she said. But endurance alone is not mastery. Kochisaria will continue to test, in ways that cannot be predicted. Awareness, adaptation, and integration with the desert's rhythm are your only allies. The tribe set up a short camp on the ridge, fires small and cautious against the glaring reflections. You clutched the talisman, its warmth a steady pulse, knowing the desert's lessons were far from over and tomorrow would demand more than today had taught. Night fell over the glassed flats, and the desert became a realm of illusions and hidden dangers. The polished sand reflected moonlight, creating an almost blinding expanse where shadows merged with light, and distance became impossible to judge. Every movement had to be deliberate, every instinct had to be trusted. Shira moved silently among the tribe, checking positions and the small fires. When she reached you, her gaze was sharp and unwavering. Tonight, the flats test balance, perception, and patience, she said. Even the slightest misstep can be deadly. Trust the desert and your instincts. Let the talisman guide you. Kadir gestured toward a nearby ridge. The desert is alive here, he whispered. Feel the vibrations, the subtle shifts in sand beneath your feet. Do not rely on sight alone. The flats deceive the senses and the mind alike. The tribe began moving cautiously, shadows blending with shimmering reflections. You felt disoriented immediately, dunes seemed to shift, ridges appeared where none existed, and distant formations appeared closer or farther with each step. The desert tested your perception relentlessly. A soft hissing alerted you. Pale, sinewy predators emerged from the reflections, their bodies blending with the polished sand. Their glowing eyes multiplied in the mirrored surfaces, creating illusions of far more creatures than existed. The nomads responded instinctively, using formations and terrain to confuse the predators and protect each other. You crouched low, timing your movements with precision. The talisman pulsed gently, guiding your instincts. You moved in harmony with the desert's rhythm, sensing real from false, solid from unstable. Each decision was crucial, hesitation or overreaction could be fatal. Hours passed in tense navigation. The predators tested the tribe repeatedly, darting in and out of reflections and shadows. Yet, each attempt was anticipated and countered. The desert itself seemed to reward the disciplined, the aware, the harmonious. You realized survival here depended on constant observation, attunement to subtle cues, and trust in instinct over fear. By midnight, the creatures withdrew, leaving the flats eerily quiet. The tribe paused on a ridge, exhaustion evident but spirits intact. Shira approached you, placing a hand on your shoulder. You have survived the night, she said. But endurance alone is not mastery. Kochisaria demands integration, awareness, and respect. Each trial teaches, but there is always more to learn. You sank to the sand, muscles trembling, heart still racing, yet mind sharpened. The glassed flats had taught perception, patience, and harmony with the desert. Each predator evaded, every illusion navigated, every unstable step survived had strengthened your awareness. The tribe settled for a cautious rest, fires small against the moonlit sand. You clutched the talisman, its warmth pulsing like a heartbeat in rhythm with the desert. You knew that the trials were far from over, and tomorrow, Kochisaria would demand more than today, and you would need every lesson learned to survive. Night descended over the broken dunes, and the desert became a landscape of shifting shadows and deceptive reflections. The moon cast a pale light, and the dunes glimmered like frozen waves. Every movement had to be precise, every decision deliberate, or the desert could claim you in an instant. Shira moved among the tribe, inspecting positions and checking the small fires. When she reached you, her gaze was steady. Tonight, the dunes test endurance, perception, and instinct, she said. The desert will hide predators, distort distances, and challenge your senses. Trust yourself, the talisman, and the desert's rhythm. Kadir motioned toward a ridge that overlooked a particularly jagged section of dunes. The desert communicates in subtle ways, he whispered. Feel the vibrations, detect the shifts in sand beneath your feet. Sight can deceive, but instinct will guide you if you listen. The tribe moved cautiously, shadows merging with the moonlit dunes. Reflections distorted the terrain, making pits and ridges appear false, and distant dunes seem closer or farther than reality. Your pulse quickened as you focused, letting the talisman's warmth guide your movements and anchor your perception. Suddenly, a faint hissing sound froze you in place. From the crest of a nearby dune, pale, sinewy predators emerged. Their bodies seemed to flow with the sand, blending perfectly with shadows and reflected light. The nomads reacted instantly, forming protective barriers and guiding the creatures into natural traps and depressions. You mirrored their movements, crouched low, timing each step and roll with precision. Hours passed in tense navigation. The predators darted in and out of shadows, testing the tribe repeatedly, but each time they were outmaneuvered. The desert's subtle cues pulsed beneath your feet, helping you anticipate hidden dangers, interpret illusions, and maintain balance. Survival depended on awareness, instinct, and harmonizing with the desert's rhythm. By midnight, the predators had withdrawn, leaving the dunes eerily still. The tribe paused on a narrow ridge, breathing heavily but relieved. Shira approached, her gaze intense. "You have survived the night," she said. "But endurance alone is not mastery. The desert's lessons are endless. Awareness, respect, and integration with its rhythm are the only paths forward." You sank to the sand, muscles trembling, yet mind sharpened. The broken dunes had pushed perception, patience, and instincts to the limit. Every mirage navigated, every predator avoided, every unstable dune crossed had taught a lesson in survival, harmony, and trust in the desert's rhythm. The tribe settled for a cautious rest, fires low against the pale moonlight. You clutched the talisman, feeling its warmth pulse in sync with the desert. You knew that tomorrow would bring new trials, harder, more intricate, and more dangerous. Survival here was earned, never guaranteed. Dawn broke over the broken dunes, pale light stretching across jagged sand ridges and glittering crystal patches. The desert seemed calm, yet the nomads knew better. Each reflection could mislead, each shadow could hide danger, and every step required absolute focus. Shira gathered the tribe at the edge of a high dune. "Ahead lies the final expanse," she said. "It combines everything you have faced, shifting sand, mirages, predators, and hidden pitfalls. Endurance, perception, instinct, and patience will all be tested. Every step must be deliberate, every decision conscious." Kadir stood beside you, eyes scanning the horizon. "The desert will push you beyond what you believe possible," he whispered. "Trust your instincts, trust the talisman, and listen to the rhythm beneath your feet. Doubt is as dangerous as miscalculation." The final expanse stretched endlessly, pale dunes rising and falling like frozen waves. Sunlight reflected off glassy patches, creating deceptive images that shifted with every step. The ground was unstable in places, with hidden pits and uneven ridges. Every step had to be measured and intentional. The tribe moved carefully, flowing in unison. You held the talisman tightly, feeling its warmth and subtle pulse, guiding your instincts as the desert challenged your perception and endurance. Every vibration beneath your feet became a message, every ripple in the sand a warning. Suddenly, movement flickered in the distance. Pale, sinewy predators emerged, their eyes glowing faintly in the sunlight. Mirrored surfaces multiplied their forms, creating illusions of far greater numbers. The tribe reacted instantly, forming defensive patterns and luring the creatures into shallow depressions. You followed their movements, crouching and rolling with precise timing, guided by instinct and the desert's subtle cues. Hours passed in tense, deliberate navigation. The expanse seemed endless, each dune and reflection a test of awareness, patience, and judgment. The sun's heat drained strength, yet the desert sharpened your senses, forcing complete focus and attunement to subtle signals, the shift of sand beneath a foot, faint vibrations, or the glimmer of a predator hiding in plain sight. By late afternoon, the tribe reached a high ridge marking the edge of the expanse. Exhausted but intact, you exhaled, muscles trembling, mind alert. Shira approached, her expression serious. "You have endured the final expanse," she said. "But survival is never guaranteed. Awareness, adaptation, and integration with the desert's rhythm are the only true allies in Kochisaria." The tribe set up a short, cautious camp. Fires flickered against the pale dunes, and you held the talisman, its warmth pulsing in sync with the desert. You knew the trials had tested your body, mind, and instincts to the limit. Tomorrow, the desert would present new challenges, and every lesson learned would be vital. The night over the final expanse was unlike any before. The moonlight reflected off the glassy sand in dizzying patterns, and the desert seemed alive, whispering secrets through every ripple and vibration. The lessons of days past had sharpened your instincts, honed your awareness, and trained your mind to read even the subtlest cues, but this final trial would demand everything. Shira gathered the tribe for one last briefing. "Tonight, Kochisaria reveals its ultimate test," she said, voice calm yet commanding. "The expanse will challenge endurance, perception, judgment, and harmony with the land. You have survived because you have learned to integrate with the desert. But mastery is not given, it is earned through every decision, every step, every breath." Kadir placed a hand on your shoulder. "Trust the talisman," he said. "Trust your instincts. Trust the desert. It has taught you everything necessary to survive, but it will demand precision, awareness, and courage tonight." The tribe moved forward, navigating the pale dunes with extreme caution. Every reflection, every shadow, every subtle shift in the sand was scrutinized. The desert's rhythm pulsed through your body, a steady pulse you had learned to follow, guiding each step, each movement, each decision. From the crest of a ridge, a movement flickered, pale, sinewy predators gliding across the mirrored dunes. Their forms multiplied in reflections, creating illusions of a horde far larger than reality. The nomads reacted instantly, forming protective patterns and guiding the predators into hidden depressions. You mirrored their movements perfectly, crouching, rolling, and leaping with precise timing. The desert's pulse and the talisman kept you aligned with reality amidst the illusions. Hours passed in tense vigilance. The final expanse pushed your endurance, tested perception with mirages, and demanded constant judgment. Every dune became a challenge, every shifting patch of sand a potential trap. Your mind was exhausted, yet acutely focused. The lessons of the labyrinth, the dune labyrinth, the flats, the hollow expanse, and the glassed flats converged, guiding each decision. Finally, a ridge emerged, marking the edge of the expanse. The tribe exhaled collectively, though exhaustion weighed heavily on every body. Shira approached, her gaze intense yet approving. "You have endured Kochisaria," she said. "Not by strength alone, not by courage alone, but by awareness, integration, and respect for the desert. Survival here is earned, and today, you have earned it." You sank to the sand, muscles trembling, lungs burning, but a sense of clarity washed over you. The desert had been relentless, unforgiving, and yet instructive. Every predator evaded, every mirage navigated, every unstable dune crossed had taught lessons far beyond mere survival. You had become attuned to the desert's rhythm, integrated into its harsh, ancient intelligence. As the tribe set up a cautious camp on the ridge, fires low against the reflective sands, you held the talisman tightly. Its warmth pulsed in sync with the desert, a reminder of lessons learned and trials endured. Kochisaria had tested everything, body, mind, spirit, and you had survived. Not by chance, not by luck, but by learning, adapting, and moving as one with the desert itself. For a moment, the desert fell silent. The wind whispered softly over the dunes, and in that quiet, you understood, survival was never final. Kochisaria would continue to demand awareness, adaptation, and respect, but for now, you had proven yourself, even if only for one day. The desert, vast and eternal, stretched before you, alive with hidden dangers and ancient lessons. And you, shaped, sharpened, attuned, were ready to face whatever came next.